I wonder if there was a word to describe the show that I'm talking about today. Because Gatchaman Crowds is not a sequel. Yes, it is not the first Gatchaman to exist. There have been others. But it is not a traditional remake, as the characters are entirely different and everything's kind of been upgraded for the modern age. Could it be a reimagining then? Let's take some elements from the old Gatchaman, at least enough just to keep the name Gatchaman and at least be able to say, oh yeah, no, it's Gatchaman. Just a bare amount of elements, but with everything else, just kind of make it entirely new and original. So yeah, I guess reimagining would be a good term for this. Let's go with that. So Gatchaman Crowds is a reimagining of an anime series from the 70s. Science Ninja Team Gatchaman. It sounds really awesome in that kind of, 70s sort of way. But when looking at that old 70s animation, in retrospect from the future, it's very easy for a North American viewer to notice the parallels between it and a series called Super Sentai, or Power Rangers, if you prefer. But, as I mentioned, Gatchaman Crowds takes elements, but makes everything else new. Everything else is entirely different. But the question is it good different, or bad different? Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, the 2013 anime and its 2015 sequel, Gatchaman Crowds, and Gatchaman Crowds Insight. Let's jam! When I said that the baseline for this series was ripped from Super Sentai, I kinda meant it. You have this spiritual alien mentor character named JJ, who randomly goes into the world and grants people the powers of a Gatchaman, i.e. the ability to transform into a supersuit, defeat alien entities, and make the world safe. The unique element in this series, however, is the show's main protagonist, Hajime Ichinose, a 16-year-old girl who gets the powers of a Gatchaman but uses them in non-traditional ways. Her character is an oddity. She comes off as an over-enthusiastic, highly eccentric nutball, to put it lightly. She never seems to take anything seriously, especially with her new job, but she ends up being far more intelligent than anybody gives her credit for. While her comrades can easily be classified by various superhero stereotypes that have existed in the Sentai format for years upon years, Hajime's attitude is almost a complete foil for what we consider to be their version of a traditional superhero. For example, in the early episodes we are introduced to beings known as mess, and it is shown to us that these mess end up abducting humans for some unknown reason, and it becomes the mission of Gatchaman over the course of many years prior to hunt down the mess and eliminate their threat to society. So what does Hajime do? She befriends them. This, as it turns out, was a good idea because the mess are actually quite friendly, and it was all a misunderstanding, and they immediately released everyone that they had accidentally captured. These aren't really spoilers, by the way, as this is something that just happens in the first 2 episodes, but it just shows how much more level-headed Hajime is, and her upbeat attitude leads to more favorable resolutions, as these beings who the Gatchaman have been fighting for what I can assume to be years were probably never hostile to begin with. Thus begins the social commentary of Gatchaman Crowds. At this point, the traditional 5-man superhero team becomes basically a backdrop as the show goes on to further introduce its world. A new social network has come out called Galax that awards users who help others. Do you need medical attention? If there's a doctor or a nurse using Galax nearby, they will be notified to your plight. Need legal advice? Perhaps a lawyer using Galax can offer their services. The network's creator, Rui, has the ambition to upgrade the world with designs for world peace, and this network is the first step to achieving that. But Rudy also has a superpower. On top of this highly popular social network and a badass AI friend, this ability allows other people to subconsciously control superpowered avatars known as crowds. Name drop! And while Rui fully intends for the crowds to be used for good, there are those who think that to truly upgrade the world, that they should use crowds to eliminate obstacles like corrupt politicians, despite the moral problems of such acts. And that's the end of the summary. The overall commentary that the show wants to convey is a take on the age-old question of what makes a hero. The show is able to take various viewpoints on this, to have an inward discussion of the pluses and minuses, and also to look at what could make the perfect world. On the one side, you have the argument that if heroes exist, then society will rely upon those heroes to solve all the world's problems. A person will decide to ignore and not help someone in need because that's the hero's job, not theirs. Counter to that is that there will always be situations that a regular person cannot solve. As good of a system as Galax is, even its creator at times feels the need to rely on these superpowered avatars of crowds in order to solve problems and save lives. Because these avatars are able to do so much more than your average person. Obviously, Hajime is the show's answer to this question, but she's also an example of an exceptional hero and human being. Hajime is a hero who believes that heroes are meant to solve problems that regular people can't do on their own. But she praises the existence of Galax for being a way that regular people can work together to help solve problems and make a better world. But she does not believe that society should rely on one or the other. And her mindset allows her to not be restricted by either side of the argument. Hajime's personality is all about helping people, and she's not going to be tied down by rules or regulations or social niceties or even orders from her Gatchaman superiors if that gets in the way of her being able to help people, keep them happy, keep them safe. What I really like the show is that it tells us that none of these mindsets, none of these ways of looking at things are necessarily wrong. They are all different takes on the same problem that all have their individual merits. And this isn't the only way that the series is rather progressive in its viewpoint either, as there are several characters who are trans.
One is a member of the Gatchaman, OD, and the other is the series' main antagonist, a shape-shifting alien called Berg Katze, which I probably mispronounced.
Who is the show's embodiment of an internet troll, and is incidentally one of the most flamboyantly awesome villains ever. Thank you, Mamoru Miyano. Even the creator of Galax, Rui, is a guy who cross-dresses when out in public, and the cast finds this perfectly normal. The way it should be. The first season ends up being this rather fascinating take on what makes a good hero, what makes a good person, and in turn, what makes a good society. And as such, I thoroughly enjoyed watching it. Season 2, not as much. And this is odd because the things that I found fascinating about Season 1 are taken to their inevitable extreme in Season 2, Gatchaman Crowd's Insight. But I don't feel like it worked the same way. Insight goes beyond the simple question of what makes a hero, but tries to delve deeper into the question of what makes a perfect society, and it introduces new characters to answer just that. It revolves around individualism, what that is, and people fighting against the will of society, not going with the flow. It's hard to fully explain without specific details that end up spoiling Season 1 as to why I don't think I was as engaged or interested in the plot. But let me summarize by saying that Insight takes a very long time to come to a conclusion that I came to early on. Allow me to paraphrase a line spoken by Tommy Lee Jones in Men in Black. A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. And this is the crux of what happens in Insight. But at the same time, Insight tries to be so mind-bogglingly idealistic, it numbs the brain. We're talking about Shiro Emiya levels of idealism here, and it makes several characters come off as childish and naive at times. Or maybe that's just my internal pessimism and cynicism kicking in. Now, on the other hand, if you've never been in a discussion with other people trying to piece together how you could potentially make this perfect world, a world in which everybody is happy, then quite possibly you will enjoy Insight a lot more than I did. But from where I sit, most of those conversations inevitably lead to the conclusion that if you want to make a perfect world, you have to remove the people that are stopping it from being perfect. And that is never a place you want to go if you hope to keep your morality intact. The highlights of the animation are tied into the show's style. The character designs have this rather upbeat pastel look to them, and it really tries to keep the show colorful without falling into the trap of it being too cute. Though it was kind of interesting how over time you start to notice that no one in the show really blinks at all. And when you do realize that, it becomes kind of disconcerting, but if you can get past it, then it ends up adding to the character's expressions. Along with the comeback of that old V-shaped mouth that Hajime likes to sport instead of a traditional smile. My opinion on the 3D is mixed, mainly because I can't get over how shiny it looks. Personally, I'm one who prefers 3D in anime when it's unnoticeable, or at least tries to be. The 3D here is obviously not that. It is 3D and it doesn't try to hide it. Now, on the other hand, the actual 3D designs are indeed quite impressive, with outfits that match all the Gatchaman's personalities and weapons and abilities that do the same. I guess it's just because I would have preferred it if it was done in 2D. I understand why it wasn't, because it's a cost issue. It's just something I'll have to get over. In the sound department, the music shines less in its opening and ending themes and more so in its actual soundtrack. I'd like to take a moment to give specific mention to a track called Gatchaman, In the Name of Love. It is this high-energy electric track that comes with its own built-in supreme moment of awesome that is this.
Gatchaman! 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 Gatchaman!
Never since Escaflowne have I been this pumped for music that just has its title as the majority of lyrics. Now, the dub for this series is tricky. So much of the show's personality relies on, well, Hajime's personality. It would not be unfair to say that she is the linchpin of the whole show. Problem is, her rather aloof yet upbeat attitude is kind of unusual. And in English, this ended up turning into her being loud, obnoxious, and over time, kind of grating. So I ended up going with sub for this one. Plus, you know, again, the sub has Mamoru Miyano. You can't beat him for going over the top. That just can't be done. Honestly, I enjoyed myself a lot with this series, the first season especially. It took an interesting route with its social commentary that I found enlightening and, to use this joke again, insightful. Hajime as a character is a joy to watch, especially when she gets going, and I can easily put her on a short list of characters that I've been truly impressed by over the last couple of years. The show is progressive, with a varied cast and varied opinions. It has action, excitement, an awesome soundtrack, and has something to just sit down and enjoy? I did just that. My problems mostly lie with the series' second season. This is where I felt that despite the social commentary being detailed and a continuation on what happened in the first, I found it to be predictable and not as exciting as what we were given in season 1. On its own, it is totally fine, but after watching season 1, I feel that it pales in comparison, which is kind of a disappointment. Gatchaman crowds might also end up disappointing any fans out there of the original Gatchaman series from the 70s, because I think it would be fair to say that Crowds is Gatchaman in name only. Sure, the antagonist shares similarities with a character from that 90s series, and there are references to the old series, throwbacks if you will, but nothing that heavily impacts the main story of the show or the main characters. As such though, if you've never seen the original, you won't notice any of this and it won't impact your enjoyment. You might just question why everything is bird-themed. And so, with all that in mind, I present Gatchaman Crowds with the overall recommendation to buy it rather than stream. Granted, in my personal opinion, that only holds 100% true for Season 1, because if I was talking about the second season on its own, that would be a solid stream only. But combined, I'm happy about giving a buy here. The show is a fascinating take on the question of what is a hero, and it was a treat to watch. Hopefully you think so as well. At the time of this video, Gatchaman Crowds has been licensed and is available from Sentai Filmworks on DVD and Blu-ray. The series is also available for illegal streaming over on Crunchyroll, if you happen to have access to it and are not in a country where their premium service is the only way to go. The review copy for this video was lovingly provided by the wonderful folks over at RightStuffAnime.com, a fine purveyor of anime DVDs, Blu-rays, and other such merchandise for you to enjoy. You can pick up Gatchaman from them among many other shows, because if it's in print, they have it. That's not their slogan or anything, but it probably should be because it's true. For alternate anime recommendations, I first point you towards Tiger and Bunny, as it is another take on what it means to be a hero, with similar 3D graphics and a fairly decent story to go along with it. Second recommendation goes to Digimon Summer Wars, for its take on social media and how an online network can connect people together to save the world. Between these two, you should hopefully find something to your liking. And that's it for me. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and hey, if you like what I do here and feel like helping out, please consider going and checking out my Patreon page, and if you feel it within your heart, also consider donating. Very special thanks to Joshua Garcia, Lulika Adachi, Grace Anderson, Nikolai Gray, and Victor Ekmach for donating already. You all are seriously amazing. So amazing, and I thank you. So until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.